Welcome, dear listeners, to Sundust Short Horror Stories, where the shadows of the past creep into the quiet corners of your night. I'm your host, bringing you tales plucked from the dust of forgotten graves, stories that remind us how thin the line can be between life and the eternal dark. Tonight's chill comes from a time not so long ago. It's called Ring Bell of Still Alive, when medicine was more guesswork than science, and death wasn't always as final as it seemed in the days of our grandparents or perhaps great-grandparents. The fear of being buried alive haunted entire communities. Doctors had no machines to monitor hearts or brains. They relied on mirrors held to lips, feathers under noses, or simply waiting for the body to grow cold. Mistakes happened, terrible, unimaginable mistakes. To ease this dread, a grim precaution became common in some rural places. A small bell mounted above the grave, connected by a thin string that ran through a hole in the coffin lid and into the hand of the deceased. If the corpse awoke in that suffocating darkness, they could pull the string, ring the bell, cry out to the living, "I'm still here." My grandfather shared this next tale with me when I was young, a story from his own childhood that he swore was true. It's about his Aunt Jane and a bell that rang too late. Years ago, in a quiet countryside much like the one my grandfather grew up in, things were far simpler and far more unforgiving than today. There were no hospitals with bright lights and beeping monitors, no advanced tests to confirm the end of life. When someone fell ill, families cared for them at home, and death often came swiftly and without warning. That's what happened to Aunt Jane. She was only 33, full of life one week and stricken with a sudden, fierce sickness the next. A raging fever gripped her, sapping her strength day by day. After about a week, her breathing grew shallow, then stopped altogether. Her family, hearts heavy with grief, checked for any sign of life, but found none. The local doctor was summoned. He examined her carefully, felt for a pulse, held a mirror to her lips, and pronounced her dead. Jane was sent to the undertaker, who prepared her body with quiet respect, washing her, dressing her in her finest clothes, laying her in a simple wooden casket lined with faded satin. A few days later, the funeral came and went under a gray sky. Mourners gathered at the small family plot in the local cemetery, said their tearful goodbyes, and lowered her into the earth. But in those days, out of caution and that lingering fear, a safety measure was often added. A bell was placed atop a short post beside the fresh tombstone. A thin string was threaded through a small hole drilled in the coffin lid down into the grave and gently tied around Jane's wrist or placed in her cold hand. If by some cruel twist of fate she wasn't truly gone, she could tug that string, the bell would ring, help would come rushing. The very next day, as my grandfather played near the edge of town, a friend came running up to him, breathless and wide-eyed. "The bell, it's ringing. Aunt Jane's bell." Grandfather's blood turned to ice. He bolted home to tell his parents. They didn't hesitate. Grabbing shovels, they raced to the cemetery with a handful of neighbors in tow, and there it was, the faint, frantic tinkling of that bell, carried on the wind like a desperate plea. They fell to their knees in the soft dirt, digging furiously. Sweat poured down their faces as they uncovered the coffin and pried open the lid. There lay Aunt Jane, but not peacefully. Her eyes were wide open, frozen in a stare of pure, unimaginable terror. Her face was twisted in agony, lips pulled back in a silent scream. Deep, bloody scratches marred the inside of the coffin lid, frantic gouges from her fingernails as she clawed desperately for freedom. The string lay tangled around her fingers, pulled taut in her final moments. She had been buried alive. Waking in that pitch-black box, lungs burning for air, she must have thrashed and pulled the bell. In panic it rang. But no one heard soon enough. By the time rescuers arrived, the last whisper of oxygen had fled and Jane had slipped away. This time, forever. Grandfather said the family never spoke of it again, but the story lingered like a shadow. Some say on quiet nights, if you pass an old cemetery, you might still hear a faint bell, ringing from a grave long forgotten. Is it the wind, or someone reaching out from the other side begging? Ring the bell, if still alive. Thank you for joining me in the sundust tonight. Sleep well, if you can. Until next time.